Hi, everybody. Welcome to Christian Homestead. My name is Jared. This is one of those videos that just came to me randomly. I don't know if it's a prompting of the spirit, but the other day I was thinking about the story of when President Howard W. Hunter, at the time he was president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, he was at a BYU devotional, and there was a person that came up to him claiming that he had a bomb and threatened him. It disrupted the devotional, and it was a scary moment. And I remember when I was growing up, someone saying that one of the things that happened during this situation is that the audience spontaneously started singing a hymn. And so I wasn't sure if that was true or not, but I got it all straight now. And so I want to cover this story, what happened. And then I also want to share what President Hunter said during this devotional. And it's interesting because President Oaks comes up in this, surprisingly. And it's such an unusual thing. But what he had to say is so good, and it actually goes along very nicely with the messages that we heard in this last general conference. So before I get into it, the reason why I'm recording myself in this video is because I wanted to show you this product. I brought it up in a live stream, but this is a Easter Crush countdown. I reached out to 3D or tiny 3D temples, and they not only do the miniature temples, but they put this together. I saw it on Instagram. I was instantly pulled to it because we've been talking on the channel about how to celebrate Easter and Holy Week and the Easter season and things that we can do, new traditions, new decorations. Well, here's a tradition, and I truly believe in this one because it's a countdown where you turn this thing up here. It starts on Palm Sunday. So you could say that this is like a Holy Week countdown. You start on Palm Sunday. You have all the different scenes from Holy Week. Like you have Palm Sunday right here. You have the Last Supper. You have Christ carrying his cross. And then here he is in Gethsemane. And then once you get to the next Sunday and the resurrection, what you do is you pull the tab right here, it rolls away the stone, and then you have the resurrected Christ. And then at the top, you have the ascension of Jesus Christ, which I prefer to look at as the second coming. And it lights up. In the back, there's this. It plays music. It lights up. You plug it in with a USB. So the link for this is in the description box below. I got a 15% discount for you if you use the link in the description box. And this helps me too. It helps support the channel. I get a small percentage of that, but I really like this product. So it's called a Easter Crush Countdown. Okay, let's get into this story. So first of all, there is footage of it. This is on Hard to Find Mormon Videos YouTube channel. You have this first video, which is separate from the actual devotional talk where he delivers the full talk. So this is before he gave the talk. And at this part, he's looking over at the guy that's coming up on stage. You can see his facial expression right there. And then the video goes dark. And then it says technical difficulties, which is a lie. There were no technical difficulties, but there was a difficulty with the devotional. Afterwards, he calmly delivers his devotional talk, the whole thing, composed. There is this one part that was not part of the talk where he's like, today I want to talk to you about difficulties in life as just demonstrated right now. But the story, the parts of the story, I want to share this from The Daily Universe by BYU. This was published January 10th, 2023 by Gabriel Shiasawa. 30 years later, the Marriott Center bomb threat. And Here's a picture of when it was taking place. This was back in 1993. Now, you guys, I know that I'm in my 40s now and I'm getting old, but I'm not so old to have lived in a time where photography was mostly black and white. Black and white. I don't know why these pictures are in black and white. It was 1993. I mean, there were people, I don't know when color photography became the main thing, but certainly by 1993. By 1993, you had photographers like Ansel Adams that would do black and white photography for artistic effect. So I don't know, but these pictures are in black and white. And so I used Adobe Firefly to give it some color. And it did a pretty okay job. It didn't quite get Howard W. Hunter's face correct, but it's good enough for the thumbnail. Or or do you think I should have gone with this one? I don't know what's going on here. He has more of a tattoo. It looks like it's a courtroom. I guess that's what Adobe Firefly thought was going on when I gave it the reference image. Okay, so let's read the story, and then I want to read from his talk. February 7th, 1993, President Howard W. Hunter, then president of the Quorum of the 12 of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, comes to Brigham Young University to give an evening fireside. President Hunter walks to the podium in the Marriott Center. There are more than 18,000 students in the audience. It's a wonderful privilege for me to be with you, he begins. That's when 27-year-old Cody Judy marches up to the podium, yelling threats and claiming to have a bomb. That's when the screaming starts. That's when, if you're watching the broadcast from home, the television goes dark. Jim Monson was working as an usher during the fireside. When the floor seating filled, he put up a rope so people in the stands knew not to enter the floor. Then Judy stood up behind Monson and jumped over the rope. I stepped forward to stop him, and he held up whatever it was that he had in his hand, the fake detonator, and he just told me to back off, Monson said. Judy, carrying a briefcase in one hand and what looked like a bomb detonator in the other, told everyone to stand on the stand to leave. "I've got dynamite," Judy yelled, his voice echoing through the Marriott Center. And here he is in a white blazer, which I think may tie into his motivations for why he did this. To get down, Judy, Long said, he, quote unquote, basically body surfed over students to get to the floor. Christy Euler, an 18-year-old freshman, was sitting near the front of the Marriott Center. I think a lot of us thought at first, this is some weird object lesson. Like this is part of his talk that he has someone run in and they're going to make a point about it, Euler said. Judy handed President Hunter a letter to read, calling for Judy to be the church's new prophet. President Hunter refused to read the letter. Now, like we just read, at this point, he was president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. If we go to the Wikipedia article for presidents of the church, at that time, in 1993, President Ezra Taft Benson was still president of the church. So I'm not sure why Judy thought that the president of the Quorum of the 12 could make him the prophet. I don't know. I don't remember because I was a kid at the time. I don't know if Ezra Taft Benson was ill. And so maybe Judy thought that President Hunter was calling the shots or something like that. But I do want to point out, it's really interesting because if we go to this, this is on the church website, Gospel Courses, Presidents of the Church Student Manual, and you go to chapter 14 for Howard W. Hunter. has like a little timeline of his life, and they included this incident. As you can see, there's not a whole lot of items here, probably like a little over a dozen or so. So at age 77, he was set apart as acting president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. And then at age 80, he became president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. At 81, he dedicated the BYU Jerusalem Center in May of 1989, which is really significant. We've talked about all the miracles that took place for that center to become a reality. President Jeffrey R. Holland's involvement in it because he was the president of BYU at the time, and just the implications that this could become a temple of Jerusalem. I'm not going to get into all that. Okay, and then here we go. At 85, he was confronted by a threatening intruder while speaking at the BYU Marriott Center, Provo, Utah. And then the next year, he became president of the church. Now, it's one of those things that's so unusual. I don't know if there's been other situations like this. I know that we've had presidents of the church who had previously had their lives threatened, but so specifically President Nelson and President Oaks, they both were in life-threatening situations, but I don't think it was because of their position. Like President Oaks, his story, I think it took place when he was younger, uh, before he was even a general authority, I believe. They weren't attacked because they were general authorities. So as far as this goes, like someone who was attacked because they were a general authority and there was like some kind of like hostage situation, I think this might be the only one in recent times. I'm sure in the early church, I mean, there were like plenty of things back then, but in recent times, this kind of stands apart. It's unique. It's rare, I believe. So it's a moment where the adversary um, was doing his thing. I don't know if the adversary was like, yeah, I know that President Benson is on his way out, because one of the common themes that I've seen on my spreadsheet called Timeline Visions and Visitations, where I've tried to collect every single instance of heavenly messengers and also the adversary showing up. I've noticed that there's so many times that Satan shows up before something good is going to happen. And I don't know if that's what was going on here. It is what happened, but it's just interesting it happened before he became president of the church, the year before. We've noticed so many things that seem to coincide with changes in the presidency. We've seen things with President Nelson and President Oaks. Just a quick example, for both of them, the year before they became president of the church, you had a great American eclipse. And both of those eclipses, one went over Jackson County and all the church sites in Missouri. The other one in 2024 went over the Sacred Grove. It also went over the Kirtland Temple that had just recently been purchased the month before. It just feels like it's along those lines. Okay, and then at 87, he presided over the creation of the church's 2000th stake, the Mexico City, Mexico Contreras stake. And then he died in Salt Lake the 3rd of March, 1995. He was only president of the church for about 9 months, right here, 9 months. Okay, so so Judy wanted to become the church's new prophet and felt that the way to accomplish that was to threaten the president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles with a fake bomb. Okay, continuing. President Hunter refused to read the letter. Rex Jackson, an elderly man in the audience, approached the podium to try to talk to Judy, and Judy shoved him to the ground. Long said people became alarmed as they realized the violent potential of the situation. And then Christy Euler says, that was the moment when we realized, oh, wait, this isn't something that was planned. I wasn't really anxious. I was just stunned. Okay, later on, I was able to confirm what I had heard when I was younger. I remember someone saying that they started singing a hymn when this took place, and I was like, then I later I was like, is that just somebody like making something up? Is it, you know, is somebody embellishing the story? But no, that is what happened. From behind her in the stands, Euler began hearing students spontaneously singing, "We thank thee, O God, for a prophet." Soon the whole Marriott Center was filled with people singing the hymn, followed by "I am a child of God." Um, I think, oh yeah. And then it's interesting because there's this part of the article. BYU police Lieutenant George Besendorfer compared the lack of security at the 1993 incident to the heightened security used when President Dallin H. Oaks gave a BYU campus devotional on September 13th, 2022. It's just interesting because for me, this is the second time that I've gone to a BYU devotional and then like within the last couple of weeks to make a video, and President Oaks came up. The last time it happened, I was reading a quote. I was reading a talk by Bruce R. McConkie where he was talking about solemn assemblies, and he was talking about this. I think an upcoming solemn assembly because there was going to be a new president of the church. Yeah, it was the passing of Harold B. Lee. Um, And at the very beginning of his talk, he said, something like, "Thank you to President Oaks," because at that time, President Oaks was president of BYU. So it's just, I don't know, the fingerprints of President Oaks in these two videos. It's interesting. Okay, later on, I'll put the link for this article in the description box below, like always, but there's a couple links to uh, this guy, Judy. He went to prison, but then he served his time. He kind of gave like an apology. He didn't want to frighten anybody. He genuinely believed in what he was doing, according to his blog post. So you can click on that and hear his side of the story. But anyway, so now I would like to let me just make sure I'm not. Oh yeah, one more thing. As we're talking about, going from one president of the church to another. So Howard W. Hunter became the president of the church after Ezra Taft Benson. And something that we've already covered on the channel is the fact that the day after President Benson passed away, so he passed away May 30th of 1994. The day after, there was something called the Great Basin Derecho of the 31st of May, 1994. A derecho, you can think of it kind of like an inland hurricane. It's not a hurricane, but it's like hurricane force winds over a long distance. And just to give you an idea, here's a depiction of it. And you can see Salt Lake City right in the middle of it. So you have this weird thing with this disruption at the devotional the year before President Howard W. Hunter becomes president of the church. And then the day after President Benson passes away, there's this very unusual derecho in Utah where Salt Lake City is right in the middle. I just you guys, it's so crazy. Okay. So the name of the talk is An Anchor to the Souls of Men. February 7th, 1993. He said, years ago, there was a popular music group formed at BYU that went on to considerable local stardom and acclaim, a group named the 3Ds. They took the name from their three singers, Dwayne Hyatt, Richard Dick Davis, and Dennis Sorensen. My fear is that in the 90s, if we were to form a popular singing group among our young people, it might be called the 3Ds, but that could be for despair, doom, and discouragement. Really quick. I so wish that I had a time machine right now. It could go back to the go back to the 90s. I want to see 1993 Utah the way that I remember it growing up before it became this monstrosity that it is right now, where home prices are through the roof. They have houses and businesses packed in every nook and cranny of the Salt Lake Valley and in Utah Valley. It was a much different place back then than it is now. And as far as like doom, like despair, doom, and discouragement in the 90s, I see the 90s as kind of like a peak of sorts of American history. It was a time of relative peace and prosperity and lightheartedness. I know there were like difficulties, but not like World War II, World War One, the Cold War, the '60s, even the '70s with like Vietnam. In the early '90s, you had Desert Storm, but I view the '90s as somewhat of a golden age. Maybe that's just me. Despair, doom, and discouragement in the '90s. I would kill to go back to the '90s. Okay, so he says, I'm here tonight to tell you that despair, doom, and discouragement are not an acceptable view of life for a Latter day Saint. Okay, so this is where this video starts to connect with the messages of this recent general conference. It seemed like they were really wanting to address this doom, despair, discouragement, anxiety, fear, feeling alone. Your Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ know you, they love you, they're here to help you get through trials. There was a lot of that kind of stuff in conference. So if this video that I'm doing right now is inspired, it's probably because this goes along very nicely with General Conference. So that's a really powerful statement. Despair, doom, and discouragement are not an acceptable view of life for a Latter-day Saint. So if you're feeling those things, this video is probably for you. And it kind of has been for me. The first part of this year was kind of rough. However high on the charts they are on the hit parade of contemporary news, we must not walk on our lower lip every time a few difficult moments happen to confront us. I'm just a couple of years older than most of you, and in those extra months, I've seen a bit more of life than you have. I want you to know that there have always been some difficulties in mortal life, and there always will be. But knowing what we know and living as we are supposed to live, there really is no place, no excuse for pessimism and despair. In my lifetime, I've seen two world war. Sorry. In my lifetime, I've seen two world wars plus Korea plus Vietnam in all that you are currently witnessing. I've worked my way through the Depression and managed to go to law school while starting a young family at the same time. I've seen stock markets and world economies go crazy. I've seen a few despots and tyrants go crazy, all of which cause quite a bit of trouble around the world in the process. And, we think about right now, 2026, Israel, Iran, the United States, Russia, Ukraine, all the protests and different things that we've seen in the United States and around the world. The pandemic in 2020, the potential threat of AI, just a lot of things. Continuing. So I'm frank to say tonight that I hope you won't believe all the world's difficulties have been wedged into your decade, or that things have never been worse than they are for you personally, or that they will never get better. I reassure you that things have been worse, and they will always get better. I like that. They will always get better. They always do, especially when we live and love the gospel of Jesus Christ and give it a chance to flourish in our lives. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. Um, Being a member of the church, but not just simply a member of the church, but living the gospel the best you can and repenting, staying true to your covenants, serving others. I think that's true. I think things go better for those that are on the covenant path and progressing on it. So, if anything, I think that we have a little bit of an advantage, or kind of a lot of an advantage, over those that are not members of the church. That should be reassuring. All right, continuing. Here are some actual here are some actual comments that have been made and passed on to me in recent months. This comes from a fine returned missionary. Why should I date and get serious with a girl? I'm not sure if I even want to marry and bring a family into this kind of a world. This kind of in 1993? Are you? Oh my gosh. Sorry. We've come across these statements before in other talks, like President Holland's talk, Terror, Triumph, and a Wedding Feast. He addressed like these same type of statements. I don't understand. Why should I date and get serious with a girl? Do you like girls? I do. I wouldn't want to put off my marriage. Like the better alternative is to not get married. What? Okay, how can I take the responsibility for the future of others whom I would love and care about and want to be happy? Here's another from a high school student. I hope I die before all these terrible things happen that people are talking about. I don't want to be on the earth when there is so much trouble. I sometimes wonder, in the developed nations of the world, in Western countries, if we are so comfy and cushy that we just like, we can't bear to not always be comfortable and feeling cushy and just everything going our way. Like, I don't, you'd rather die than all these terrible things happen that people are talking about? Okay, I'm not trying to like downplay how people feel. I don't understand it. Okay, and this from a recent college graduate. I'm doing the best I can, but I wonder if there is much reason to even plan for the future, let alone retirement. The world probably won't last that long anyway. And then President Hunter says, and I totally agree with this, I echo this. Well, isn't that a fine view of things? Sounds like we all ought to go and eat a big plate of worms. Yeah. Yeah, just you're right. You're right. Don't get married. Be single and miserable. Um just go hide in a cave. Um Focus on yourself. Um Go after worldly pleasures. That's definitely the better route. All right. President Hunter says, I want to say to all within the sound of my voice tonight that you have every reason in this world to be happy and to be optimistic and to be confident. Every generation since time began has had some things to overcome and some problems to work out. Furthermore, every individual person has a particular set of challenges that sometimes seem to be the earmark for us individually. Seems to be earmarked for us individually. We understood that in our premortal existence. I'm going to skip down. Yes, we all have difficult moments individually and collectively, but even in the most severe of times, anciently or modern, these problems and prophecies were never intended to do anything but bless the righteous and help those who are less righteous move toward repentance. So that's the proper view of things. I guess we ought to ask ourselves, is this is there something I need to change in my life? And maybe this will help me take that more seriously. Um, or it could simply be it's just helping to refine you, just in general, help you become more patient, help you to become more understanding of others, help you to become experienced in certain troubles so that then you can help others navigate that same situation. Okay, later on in this last dispensation there will be great tribulation. We know that from the scriptures. We know there will be wars and rumors of wars, and that the whole earth will be in commotion. All dispensations have had their perilous times, but our day will include genuine peril. Evil men will flourish, but then evil men have very, very often flourished. Calamities will come and iniquity will abound. Inevitably, the natural result of some of these kinds of prophecies is fear. And that is not fear limited to a younger generation. It is fear shared by those of any age who don't understand. Those are some key words. Fear. For those who don't understand what we understand. But I want to stress that these feelings are not necessary for faithful Latter day Saints, and they do not come from God. I love this talk so much. Ever since I started this channel, sorry, here comes the rant that I usually do. Ever since I started this channel, I've noticed so much doom and gloom in the second coming space. And there have been, content creators, authors, people that do presentations of their view of the second coming and how things are supposed to play out. And many times they have like a timeline of, okay, we haven't seen this yet, or this, this and this. And then they paint a very bleak picture. And then some of you, well, I haven't seen it in a while, actually, thank goodness. But many of you would come to me and be like, and bring those feelings into my comments section or send me emails. And uh, sometimes I've talked to people in person. Some of my friends have been affected by this. They would go, I have one friend here on YouTube that went to see somebody's presentation, and they were genuinely afraid afterwards. And we talked about it, and that presentation was no good anyway. It was, don't even get me started on that. But anyway, think about this. Think about this. If you're having these kind of feelings, President Hunter says they do not come from God. But I want to stress that these feelings are not necessary for Latter-day Saints, and they do not come from God. So if you're reading a book, you're going to some presentation that you paid for, you're watching some YouTube channel or something on Instagram or whatever, and it's causing you these feelings, then the way it's being presented may not come from God. And then he reads a scripture, Deuteronomy 31, verses 6 and 8. Be strong and of good courage. Fear not, nor be afraid of them. For the Lord thy God, he it is that doth go with thee. He will not fail thee, nor forsake thee. And the Lord, he it is that doth go before thee. He will be with thee. He will not fail thee, neither forsake thee. Fear not, neither be dismayed. This video is going a little bit longer than I wanted it to, but here's something you can pause and read if you want. There's a mention here of preparing to meet Christ at his second coming and to be with him in the millennium. It's a quote from President Marion G. Romney. And then this is the last thing I want to read from this talk. As children of God and descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, we must seek to dispel fear from among people. A timid, fearing people cannot do their work well, and they cannot do God's work at all. That's a powerful statement too. You think about your calling, you think about being a parent, a grandparent, you think about ministering. A timid, fearing people cannot do their work well, and they cannot do God's work at all. Latter-day Saints have a divinely assigned mission to fulfill that Latter-day Saints have a divinely assigned mission to fulfill that simply must not be dissipated in fear and anxiety. So I've added this quote to a few different places on my spreadsheets. This is my quotes A through Z spreadsheet, currently row 209 for fear. I already have a few other quotes on here that have to do with fear. I added it to what's currently row 163 for doom and gloom mindset. It's for those that typically consume what I call doom and gloom entertainment and content. I've added a row for anxiety. So this is the new row 40. And then I also added it to row 226, which I have titled Future is Bright. These are all the different times that all these different prophets and apostles have said to look to the future with faith, in anticipation, in joy, in optimism, including from President Nelson. I don't know if I have any from, President Oaks. Here's one from President Oaks. My most recent one is from President Oaks. Young people can look to the future with optimism, in spite of war, political polarization, and uncertainty. Be happy, he said. Do not be depressed. Trust in the Lord. It seems like this has been an issue. This has been an issue for a while. I wonder how often this is brought up, how many times there's talks addressing optimism, despair, fear, anxiety, the condition of the world. But I feel like that was like one of the main things being addressed in this recent general conference. Okay. Is that all that I got? Oh yeah, one other thing. I was going to cover this, but there's a really good President Holland right here has some really good stuff to say along these same lines. It's another BYU speech, March 2nd, 1999. Cast not away, therefore, your confidence. I'll put the link for it in the description box below if you feel like you need more of this kind of messaging. But I would especially focus on the part that starts right here with, first of all. He has such good things to say. And then one last time, Easter countdown crash from tiny 3D temples. It is really neat. I think this is good for kids. I think it's good for anybody. It's a very thoughtfully put together product, and it's a good Easter tradition. I'm really happy that I have mine. 15% off if you use the link that's in the description box. They send it in a nice box that you can use to store it in. So it's a good product. And it will also help support the channel. So please consider buying one. And then use it next year. I would have advertised this before Easter, but I didn't quite get it when I wanted to get it. But it got here. And so, yeah. Okay. Well, that's going to be it for this one. I'll talk to you guys later.